Can you actually buy a home for $1 in Italy? How much does it cost to actually live in a lot of these digital nomad countries? How do I get the cheap houses, not the ones that are marketed to foreigners? For a decent plot near the beach, right now in 2025, you're looking at 20,000 to 80,000 US. How do you make money to travel? How can I get started? I've taken all the questions you guys have all asked me over the last few years on this channel, and I've put them into this video. The stuff that people don't tell you. Okay, so let's get started. One of the biggest topics that people have asked me right off the bat, the $1 homes in Italy. How do you get them? Where are they? How do you apply? What is it all about? Is it real? Is it not? These are the recent rules. There's 3 cities, I believe, you can buy in. There's Abruzzo, so Pen Abruzzo. There's Musamile, Sicily, and I apologize if I didn't pronounce some of these words right. There's also several in Sardinia and Tuscany, and prices range from about $1, and they do go up to $5,000. All the money that I talk about today, it will be in US dollars just to keep it easy. So how do you apply? Well, you go to the aggregator sites, and you can either go to renovita.net. Don't do that now. Do it after you watch the video. Or you can go to oneeurohome.it. So this is how it works. You choose a town. You visit the town's municipal website, you download their application, then you can provide your passport, your proof of funds, your renovation plan, and then sometimes there is a deposit required, which is around $2,000 to $5,000 US. You sign a contract with a notary. Now, these are the real costs involved. There is a renovation fee. You have to renovate it within 1 to 3 years. And usually the renovations fee run you from $25,000 to $70,000. Okay. That sometimes there's a deposit fee of $2,000 to $5,000. And sometimes there's a bit of taxes or notary fees, which is about $2,000 to $4,000. So total realistic, you're looking $35,000 to $80,000 to really get this home. Now, do foreigners without a EU residency, can they still apply? Yes, they can. You'll need an Italian bank account sometime. The renovation deadlines, you have 2 to 3 years to renovate. The homes can be very old. Some of them go back to the Roman days, like they're old. There are remote villages, there's limited jobs, slow internet, and you must maintain the house after renovation, okay? So this would be ideal for do-it-yourself renovators, retirees, digital nomads wanting to live on a cheap EU base, and anyone who loves small town Italy. Let's move on to some of the other bigger questions that you guys have been asking. So let's get into Nicaragua. I've gotten me a lot of questions about Nicaragua. Is it safe? How much does it cost? All that good stuff. So let's get there. A couple of the big questions I got in Nicaragua was, what hostel did I stay at and where did I stay? I stayed in Popoyo, and it's a tiny, small surfing village, about 2 hours from the capital. The hostel was called Tu Casa. They have 4 bedrooms, 6 bedrooms, or 8 bedrooms. The beds were decent. They weren't luxury beds or anything. There was AC at night. It was about $25 a night US. This hostel was actually about an hour to 2 hour drive. You need to take a taxi to get to another really popular surf town called San Juan. And San Juan is more of a partier place. It's a little more busy. It's busier. There's more stuff to do. There's more restaurants and cafes and bars and things like that. So you're looking at about a 1 hour car ride. And yes, you will need a motorbike to get around in Popoyo because all the roads are dirt. And it was about a 25-minute walk to the surf destination. I always walked, but a lot of people rented. Now, a lot of people also asked about buying land in Nicaragua. Where should you buy? Surf living sort of situation. Yes, foreigners can buy just like locals, and there's some really good surfing zones. Okay, there's you can buy land in Popoyo. There's also Playa Santana, Playa Colorado, and San Juan del Sur. Typically, for a decent plot near the beach, right now in 2025, you're looking at 20,000 to 80,000 US, which is pretty cheap for a piece of land. You can't get that anywhere in North America, I don't think. Cost of living in Popoyo, you're looking at renting anywhere from $500 to $700 a month US for a basic studio. Food is about $300 to $500 a month. and a scooter is about $20 a day. The Wi-Fi, it depends where it is. It's a little patchy sometimes. Make sure you have a backup SIM card. Total realistic cost of living is you're looking at around $1,500 to $1,800 a month. And then if you want to do any extra activities on that, on top of that, surfing, whatnot, you might be looking as much as $2,000, okay? Now, is Nicaragua safe for long-term travelers? Well, it is considered a communist country. So there's always that little thing in the back of your mind is, they could take your bank account or your land if they really wanted to. I doubt it would ever happen, but it is something to think about because it's not a free country. From all the expats I've spoke to that have bought land, they seem to be totally comfortable, and they've had bank accounts and land here for 20 years, and they originally bought their land around $5,000, $10,000 US. So it's really, they feel very comfortable with it and don't ever have to see a problem, and they never want to leave. So I think you're relatively safe, but just make sure you do your background, you do your research, that sort of thing. As in terms of surfing in Nicaragua, there's world-class surfing there. There's offshore winds, about 300 plus days a year. The top breaks are in Popoyo, Reef, Santana, Colorado, and Madeiras. So let's move on to same continent, but different country. Let's move down south more to Peru. Someone asked me, what bus did you use to get from Lima, which is the major capital of Peru, to Mancora, which is a very popular beachy surf destination. The bus was called ITSA, ITTSA. I'll leave the links and all these resources in the description if you miss it on the text overlays here. Someone was asking if you have power outages in Mancora. And yes, they're famous for power outages. You could be looking at a couple hours to a full day. There was one time where I had to wait 2 days for the power to come back on. So that was a bit annoying when I had a bit of work to do. So it can be a little unreliable if you have a Zoom meeting or there's people relying on you and you have Zoom schedules called. That could be a bit of a problem. What's it like living in Mancora? Well, you can get a really decent place for anywhere from $300 to $600 a month. Food would be about $250 to $450 a month. Somebody asked me if it's safe in Mancora. It's fairly safe. Just don't go out at night. Avoid late night walking solo. It's a very laid back vibe. Everyone's super friendly. The locals are super friendly. I found everyone friendly when I went surfing. The locals were very friendly. I never had any problems. I did cut off one local and he got a little annoyed because he scratched his toe, but it was my fault. So just don't make sure you drop in on anybody and you'll be all good. Now, somebody asked me, how's the surf in Peru? Well, there's about maybe 50 spots you can surf in Peru, but my 3 favorite spots were Labidos, Mancora, and Huanchaco. And there is a famous break that's the longest left in the world. Somewhere in this video link, there might be, I had made a couple of videos on Mancora and Peru. You can go check those out after. And the best time, it really depends because the seasons in Peru change so quickly. So let's move on to a very, very popular country that a lot of digital nomads just flock to, and that would be Thailand. Now, a lot of questions that you guys have been asking me a lot is, how do I find a local house? Like how do I get the cheap houses? Not the ones that are marketed to foreigners, but the cheap local rate. The best way to do it I find is to walk the island. So you got to get there, maybe buy an Airbnb for like a couple days. So don't spend too much money. Once you get there and you got your Airbnb, then you can walk around and start making friends with the locals and ask around in the local coffee shops, make friends with the locals. And then you can start wheeling and dealing and get the good rates. That's the best way. I just found going to the same coffee spot or the same cafe or the same places every day or every other couple of days, you get to know the locals there, the Thais, and then you can start asking those questions and they know a lot of good places you can rent, and that opens up a lot of doors for you. And that's like in any country, is you get there, walk around, that's the best way. Or you can hire local real estate agents. They can help you. That might be not local cheap prices, but that is an option. Another way to do it, to go on Facebook and check out the local groups in that city. And that's a great way to find deals as well. Like go into community groups and ask around who's got, such and such a place. I wouldn't really go to Facebook Marketplace because you're going to get higher prices. So that's how I always did it. And I found great deals by walking around and asking the locals. Okay, somebody asked, living on an island with many mosques. Okay, so what they're referring to is a part of Thailand. There's a big Muslim segment in Thailand, and there's a lot of mosques everywhere. And I don't know why they're asking that, but I found it actually, it's very peaceful and quiet. It's just a touch. There's one area where I stayed called Lanta, and it was just what's the word? It was a touch surreal. It felt a little, I don't know if the dystopia is the right word, but it's just a touch dystopia, because what happens is they have these massive speakers in the town, and they're massive and everybody can hear them, and they do local announcements, and I can't understand them because they're in local Thai, but they'll make announcements and they'll make political messages and advertisements on the loudspeaker while you're walking around doing your day-to-day thing. It's a little funny to listen to. And they're advertisements because they sound like advertisements and political messages. And they're also pray messages and things like that. But so I find it more comical than anything, but it was really strange because I've never lived in an environment like that. You'll be walking down the street and then all of a sudden the loudspeaker comes on, and it's a little getting used to. But you also will hear the prayers as well. Sometimes when they do their prayers, the mosque will blast out the praying. So there's that as well, but it's actually kind of soothing and calming. It's a little different. You don't understand I didn't understand the language, but it's a very peaceful environment. I found it was a very relaxing environment. So it's an interesting question. I thought somebody would ask. Now, somebody asked about the internet in Thailand and the power. Is it good for remote work? I was in a very remote part, like as remote as you could get. And yes, the internet was good about 95% of the time. I was really surprised. It did cut out once or twice, but it was only for maybe 20, 30 minutes. If there was a problem, I would just ask the landlord to reset the internet. There was a few incidents for the period I was there, but for the most part, it was pretty reliable, considering that I was out in the middle of nowhere. So yeah, the bigger cities, you're not going to have any problem. Like Bangkok, you're not going to have any problems. The bigger cities, just the remote areas, yeah, it's going to get a little slower. You're probably looking at average speeds of 200 to 500 megabaud per second. Okay, now since we're talking about Thailand, let's just jump a little bit over to another very famous, very popular digital nomad life hotspot. A lot of people ask me, what's it like to live in Vietnam? And how much does it cost to live in Vietnam? So this is one of the cheaper countries in the world you can live in. So if you are an American and you're looking to get the hell out of the US and you want to get somewhere cheap, Vietnam is a great option. You're looking at $600 to $1,000 a month. The meals are super cheap, looking $1 to $3. Now these prices are as of 2025. Food is cheap. It's very safe. The coffee's incredible. Co-working environment culture is huge. You're going to see a lot of people that are in the co-working nomad culture there. And there is some surfing too. The best city for digital nomads, I would say, is Da Nang. It's a beautiful, clean city. There's surf and there's fast internet. And that would be one you'd want to check out for sure. So since we're talking about Vietnam, if we just cross the ocean a little bit over to the Philippines, that would be my next pick. In fact, out of all the places I've been in the last 3 years, Philippines has definitely been my favorite for sure. I've made a couple of videos on the Philippines. You can go check them out after. I've left some links somewhere in below or here on the video. So what's it like living in the Philippines? Well, people are friendly. The beautiful islands. There's thousands of islands to choose from. You could spend a lifetime going through them all. There is frequent brownouts, meaning depending on the island, you could see some power outages. I did experience power outages 5 or 6 times while I was there. I was there for about 6 months, and it did happen on the one island. I was in Siargao, but I was in a very remote part of Siargao. The internet varies. Like in the busier parts of Siargao, the internet's great. If you get, the more remote you go, it starts to get a little sketchy. But now they've installed really good infrastructure, and I think they have Elon Musk's internet there now. So it's much better than it was when I was there, from what I've read and what I've heard from other nomads. Okay, now, somebody asked me if you can surf in Bohol. Sorry, I didn't pronounce that right. Bohol. No, you can't. It's not really a surfing place. It's more of a flat water. There is no break big enough. There's not enough winds, but you can do windsurfing and skimboarding and parasailing and things like that. It's really good for that. It's just not good for surfing, regular classic surfing. Somebody asked me, what would you prefer? What's better, Bali or Philippines? And more specifically, their question was, do you prefer Bali or Siargao? And that's a really good question. I would, my quick answer would be Siargao for sure. Bali was great. Bali has better gyms. They have better food, better co-working restaurants, fast Wi-Fi, easier living, huge nomad culture. All the amenities you could possibly want, even hot water. The only thing maybe is drinking water is still a challenge in some parts of Bali. So drinking bottled water is going to be more a challenge sometimes. But other than that, those are the upsides. But the downside to Bali is you got crowds, major crowds. You got over-tourism. You got garbage piling up. The pollution in the ocean is actually getting quite bad now. There was a couple famous surfers posted a couple of videos how they used to go surfing 15 years ago, and there was nothing. And now when they go to their same favorite spots, they're seeing so much garbage that they can't go surfing. So there's still really clean surfing places in Bali, but the garbage is becoming a hassle. And I think one of the leaders of Bali wants to clean up Bali by 2030 or 2040. So they are trying to proactively clean it up. They do realize it's causing a huge problem with tourism there, and it will make a mess out of their country if they don't fix it. In fact, it's so bad that I was even hesitant to go back to Bali because of the garbage. I really hate surfing in dirty water. After getting a few eye infections and ear infections in other countries, I'm a little hesitant to just jump in dirty water now. So I'll talk more about that as well. So that would be the downside. So the upside to living in the Philippines is it's not as crowded. The surfing is amazing. There's no pollution. You can easily not eat the fish and the seafood and not feel like you're going to get sick. You don't physically see the garbage floating in the water. Crystal clear blue waters, tons of islands to explore, much more remote locations. I would say it's even the last frontier to be explored in the world. It's much more quieter, and the people are super friendly. Probably maybe the more friendlier societies in the world, and the food's maybe not quite as good. It's still okay. It's good. But maybe you don't have as much choice as you would in Bali, and you don't have the same amenities. Like you just can't get really, really high quality cappuccino at every restaurant. Like you might see lower quality amenities. So you might not see like great, it's actually quite hard to get decent coffee in certain parts of the island where I was in Siargao, in the northeast part of the island. Sometimes it was hard to get a decent cup of coffee because if you wanted to make your own coffee, you had to drive 2 hours, pick up some good coffee beans, and then drive back to where you're living. So there's things like that. Also, it's cold water. Cold water is not a big deal in a hot country. But I know that a lot of North Americans just get kind of squeamish about cold water showers. But once they realize you really don't need hot water in these hot countries, it's really not a big deal. I kind of laugh when I hear about North Americans complaining about having no hot water. It's not really a big deal though when it's so bloody hot out. in the Philippines, you really look forward to the cold showers. They're refreshing and they cool you down. So you really don't need the hot water, but that is something to be aware of. He asked me, okay, Rob, if you had to name like 5 countries, what are your best islands for long-term living? For remote work, surfing, low cost. So these would be my 5 top picks. There'd be Siargao, Philippines. There would be Lombok Island, Indonesia. There's Nusa Penida, which is part of Bali. And there's Nicaragua, Popoyo. There's Peru, the north shore of Peru. And you have Okinawa, Japan. And maybe Morocco also has some really good surfing. You could as well, that's definitely a good choices too. So, okay, so this is a big one now. We're going to really change gears here. And somebody asked, a lot of people been asking me this, how do you make money online? How do you make money to travel? How can I get started? And there is actually a couple ways to do this. And you can start relatively making some decent money within 90 days. Their side hustles are a great option. And there's so many, I'm going to drop some good resources in the description. You can go check out. There's this one guy called the Side Hustle King. He was on the Diary of the CEO. And I'll leave a link to that video and his channel. And he's a huge side hustle king guy, and he tells you how to work online and start local businesses. But this is how I did it. And in fact, I do have a free course. I'll leave a link to the course somewhere around here. You can check it out after or go in the description. Now, there's a couple ways. And the first way I did it was I started creating content online. That's probably one of the easiest ways to get started. And especially now with AI, you can create content so easily, so many different ways. And that's in my free course, and I'll tell you that. But what you can do is once you start creating content, you can start monetizing different things. So you could monetize a TikTok channel. You could monetize a YouTube channel. You could sell a product around a certain niche. What I would say is start creating content around something that you're interested in and let it go from there. So in my case, what I did was I started creating content on TikTok about video editing. So because I know about video editing, so I started teaching video editing on TikTok. I started teaching how to create AI videos. I started teaching things on TikTok and Instagram. So I took what I knew and I just turned it into a course, or I turned it into a teachable skill. So people could book a call with me and I could teach it online. I could teach them what I know and they would pay me money. You can teach coaching. You can teach whatever skills you have, whether it be drone photography, gardening, surfing, whatever skill you have now, you could teach that. Or you can create a course around it, or you can offer it in different ways. So one of the big ways I make money, probably this is the fastest way I make money, is I use a service called Fiverr. It's Fiverr. And Fiverr is a huge online networking platform that brings freelancers together with buyers from all over the world. And I offer 15 different services on Fiverr. I teach editing, how to do video editing. I teach how to make AI videos. I teach photography. I teach videos. I teach all kinds of things. I also create content for other people. I create videos for people. I create YouTube videos. I create content for other people. Fiverr has probably been my best method for making money fast. I freelance. That's my main bread and butter. Anybody can start up a freelancing gig. There's probably a skill that you can offer right now on Fiverr. If you go to Fiverr after this video and check out all the things you can buy. Anything you can buy on Fiverr, if you know how to do that thing, you can become a seller. There's buyers and sellers. You can become a seller, and it's free to become a seller and offer that service and start offering that service. And you just start. I started right off like 3 years ago as a level 0, and I got a gig here and I got a gig there. And before I knew it, I had people, all kinds of people wanting to buy my services over and over and over again. And you could do the same thing. So that would be like a really easy way to get started. And I'm sure there's a skill you have that you could start. And if you don't have any skills at all, it's really easy to learn a few skills that are sellable on Fiverr. Like if you know nothing about creating an AI explainer video or a UGC video, that's just like doing a review on a product. That's a video you can make with AI now. You can learn that. Everything you can do, everything you can offer on Fiverr, you can learn for free on YouTube. That's where I learned all my skills. I never knew how to do an explainer video. I never knew how to use AI. I just watched someone on YouTube teach how to do it. I learned it for free. And then I tried it. I practiced it with some free trials of the software that they're talking about in the video. And then I flipped it around and I offered it on Fiverr. There was video editing. I never took a real video editing college course. All I did was I watched a bunch of videos on YouTube on how to do things on CapCut. CapCut is one of the editors I use to do video editing, and it works great. They have a free trial, and I learned how to use CapCut just from watching YouTube videos. And then I flipped that around and I offered that on Fiverr. I also offer the service on TikTok, on my Instagram channel and my TikTok channel. People can contact me if they want video creation. I also learned how to do other things like creating long YouTube videos just from practicing. I just learned it, and everything that I learned, everything that I offer, I just learned it on YouTube. So I never went to an official college or official course, which you could do, but you can learn everything you, if you want to sell a skill, you can learn it for free now. That's the beauty of the world that we live in. And as time progresses, it's getting easier and easier and easier to start online side hustles. So hopefully that makes sense. I also made a couple videos on it. I'll leave a link somewhere and you can go check it out on how I go into detail. You can also check out my free AI content creation course. I teach you how to make YouTube videos, how to do editing. I also teach you how to do a bunch of other stuff, how to use some AI tools, how to get started with creating content. You could literally take my free course and then go and offer that service on Fiverr. So I would recommend doing that. Or just, there's one guy, I saw one service, really cool service, that there's a guy that owns a drone and he offers it on Fiverr where he will go and film footage. So he lives in Bali, so he'll go take a drone and film some real footage for people in Bali, and then he'll sell that footage on Fiverr. So you could do that. There's so many, there's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things you could do. You could start running Facebook ads for people. That's a huge one. So video editing, Facebook ads, Google ads. If you are thinking about starting an online business, you're going to need a social media presence. So whatever it is that you decide to pick, or whatever it is you're passionate about, whatever your skills are, you're going to want to start a TikTok channel or an Instagram channel or a YouTube channel, or all three. Just pick one, I would say. Start with one and start teaching it. And you'll see that people will start to gravitate towards what you're saying. People that are interested in your thing, they'll start watching you. And if you post consistently I challenge you to post every day for 90 days. And each video that you post, just make it a little bit better than the first video. And you'll see all the big business guys out there, I'm talking like Stephen Bartlett, the guy who made, who owns the channel of Diary of a CEO. He's huge about starting a social media channel. He knows that if he can get an audience in social media, if he can build an audience, he can sell anything. If you build an audience around a thing, then you can start designing products and sell products to your audience. And there's a couple big celebrities. Like if you ever watch Dragon's Den or Shark's Tank, there's a couple, they all know the power of social media now. They're all started their own channels. They've all started growing their audiences because they know that they can start selling products to their audience. So it's a really powerful thing, and you don't have to be a big billionaire to do it. You know, the reason these billionaires are starting their own social media channels is because people like you and me started their own social media channel. They learned how to gain an audience and start a business and sell products. That's the way to do it. So if you want to start a business, the first thing to do is start social media. Start a TikTok. Don't consume social media. Post social media. It's a big difference. Start posting, start gaining an audience, and then you can start selling your products, your services, your coaching, your tutorials, or whatever it is that you want to sell, and you can start making money online that way. And that's the biggest way I think I can help you, is by telling you that, is create an audience, okay? And anyone in the world can do this. If you got a cell phone, you can do it. I used to ask people what they were doing for income all the time while I was traveling, and a lot of people would do things like teaching. I saw a lot of teachers, online teachers. So I saw a lot of people teaching different languages. Usually there was people that could speak several languages that I met, and that would be great money for them because they could do it online. I also saw a lot of tutors in different languages like math and other different languages. They would teach kids online. So there was a lot of tutors, a lot of teachers. I also saw, I did see a couple day traders. I literally don't know how much money they made, but I did see them day trading. I never have been good at that. I think it's a bit of not a great way to make your money because but anyways, I did see that. I also seen some podcasters, and I did see a lot of YouTube creators. And believe it or not, this channel that you're watching at right now does make money. It took me about 2 years to get YouTube monetized. YouTube doesn't create tons of money unless if you can get videos that make over 10,000 views, each video's getting 10,000 views, then you'll make you can make a living. And there is people that do make a living with YouTube, but you need to get your views up into the 10,000s. I don't make a living with my YouTube channel. It's more of like a side hobby. I would love it if I could make a living with just doing YouTubes, but at the moment I'm not. So just some realism there. I only make about $50 a month with my YouTube channel. There is people that are making, up into the 50K, 106 figures with their channels. The big YouTubers, of course, are making decent money. You can make money with a travel channel, but again, just a good number to shoot for. Bare minimum, your videos should be hitting 5,000 views at least. And then what you can do is you can become a YouTube partner. You can monetize by partnering with YouTube. You can also, once you start getting an audience with YouTube, you could start making deals with different brands. They'll start sponsoring you, and they'll actually give you money if you talk about them on your channel. So it is lucrative, but that's a long-term game. That's not something that's going to happen in a couple months. Unless for some reason your videos are just doing amazing. But for me, it took me 1 year to monetize my channel, and really to get money coming in. My videos haven't been high enough yet. Hopefully they will eventually. I met a lot of people that do engineering type jobs online. And I actually met a lot of people that do digital nomad work, but actually they work for other people. They work for other companies, and they're quite happy. And they would do their work online, and they would just travel around the world, and they would just talk to their boss about it and say, look, I'm going to be traveling or whatever. Like it's part of the culture now. And a lot of companies they don't mind if you travel around. So that's another way to go, is if you can find a job that lets you travel, then you can literally do that. Every now and then I will get a client off of TikTok that will want me to create content for them. And I would charge quite a bit of money for that. I would charge about $1,000 to $2,000 to create 50, 60, or even 100 pieces of content. So I would create either a couple of long YouTube videos, or I would create a series of 100 shorts. And I would come up with a certain dollar amount. And usually I would charge around $1,000 to $2,000 for that. There was a time where I would build entire YouTube channels for other people. And for that, I would charge around $5,000 to $6,000. It would take me a year to build other people's channels. I found that to be exhausting and monetizing. And I would actually promise them that I would get them monetized, and I would build their channel out for an entire year, and I would make AI videos for them, and I would charge good money, and they'd usually pay me about $300 to $500 a month, and they would usually go till their channel's monetized. That was good income. It was a little exhausting, and it's a little stressful if you cannot get them monetized. I always managed to get my clients monetized with YouTube, but and I learned a lot about creating YouTube content. But if you want to do something like that, is create a certain amount of YouTube videos for someone. Don't promise them you'll get them monetized. It's much easier to say, look, I can create 10 really good videos for you, 10 minutes long, that sort of thing, and that would be an easier way to go. So that's another way that I've created income to travel online. And I highly recommend you check out the few resources in the links below to the king of side hustles. He's got some really good suggestions as well. Somebody asked me, how much money do you need before moving abroad? I would say have $3,000 to $5,000 saved up, and your income should be at least $2,000 a month. Bare minimum $1,500 a month. $2,000 would be better. If you can get it up to $3,000, even better. $2,000 for living expenses, and then $1,000 you can spend on investing or fun stuff, So how do you work when the internet goes out? Well, that's a good question. Somebody asked me, how do you work when the internet goes out? And really, you can't. When the internet goes out, there's nothing you can do. You just make sure that you can spend the extra money, and companies now that do remote internet if you want to spend the money. Okay, so this is a big one. This topic, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I get a lot of questions about insurance. If you don't have travel insurance, you're insane, because I just can't believe how many people travel without it. It blows my mind, because I actually got injured. And you'll see if you watch my other videos and you know me, I got injured really badly and ended up spending $5,000. And my insurance that I had did not cover, they didn't take it at the hospital. So I had Saftey Wing. It's a very popular digital nomad insurance. They did reimburse me. They gave me a bit of hassle at first when I was first injured, and the hospital did not accept them. So the hospital wasn't big enough for them. They just didn't know Saftey Wing, so they did not accept them. So I probably wouldn't use Saftey Wing again. There is bigger companies out there like World of Nomads, IMG Global. There's Alliance Travel, and there's Pacific Cross. They're great in Asia, okay? Make sure that you get the biggest and best insurance that you can possibly find. Do not skimp out on getting the cheapest insurance. I ended up getting, I paid around $100 a month with Saftey Wing. And then after I got injured, I went to a better company and started paying about $200 a month, and included in extreme sports. So I highly recommend that you get really good insurance, okay? Even if you can get helicoptered out of the country, even better. I know there's services that will come get you, and they'll fly you out of the country and fly you to a hospital if you get injured. Like, if you can afford that, I would even get that. Okay, the next question. Somebody asked me, what insurance for scooters abroad? Okay, so again, don't go with the cheapest scooter guy, because he probably doesn't have insurance. He doesn't have collision. He doesn't have any insurance. There's none of that crap. So make sure you go for the reputable company that has actual insurance that you can get collision damage, theft, personal injury, liability, get all those things. even if it's a little extra money, because again, if you get hurt, your insurance company is going to ask if you had vehicle insurance. And if you didn't have vehicle insurance, it could be an issue as well. They might give you a hard time about that. So make sure that you're just covered every way from Sunday when it comes to that. It's a little extra money, but it's just worth the peace of mind. And I had 3 flat tires. In the time traveling, scooters are very common. It's very common that they get flat tires. And if you're going 50 clicks an hour and that tire goes flat on you and you're going around a corner, you can kiss the pavement real fast. So make sure that you don't speed and wear a helmet and get insurance. Take it easy on the roads. Check that bike. Get a decent bike. Okay, so someone asked me, so how do you do it? How do you move abroad? You got your income. You got some income coming in now. Do you actually need to get a visa? And the short answer is no. A lot of these countries, you don't need a visa. And I'll go over each country's visa rules and the types of visas they have in a second. If you want to stay longer, like a long-term thing, then you'll want to start applying for a visa. For example, Bali has a digital nomad visa. And some of these other countries have retiree visas. I'll talk about the quick way to do it and then the longer visas. You got Nicaragua. Nicaragua has a 90-day renewable, meaning you don't have to apply. You can just show up. They give you a 90-day visa and you can renew it for a fee. And to renew it, you just do a border run. So you just hop over the Guatemalan border, come back the same day, pay the fee, you got another 90 days. And most people just do the border runs. There is no long-term visa to apply for as of right now for Nicaragua, okay? And Peru has a 90-day visa, but they also have an 180-day visa. So I don't know. Sometimes they give you the longer one. Sometimes they give you the shorter one. I don't know why you get the longer and the shorter sometimes. When I went, I got the 90-day. And again, if you want to stay longer, you have to leave, stay elsewhere for a night or two, and then you can come back. And again, caveat here, please double check the recent rules because they might have changed the time you watch this video and the time you travel. They are changing all the time, okay? So check that out. The rent is cheap. You can live in Lima, right in some of the most beautiful districts for really cheap. And there's no digital nomad visa yet in Peru. And that would be that one. Okay, Thailand. Thailand has a 60-day, 90-day visa plus extensions. Thailand has probably been one of the easiest countries to renew in. It literally was just show up, no lineup. I paid a fee, $20 or something. It was super cheap. And I just renewed my visa and it's just so easy to renew. And you can just renew up to 4 years. It's a joke. It's so easy. For example, compared to Bali, I had to, the process is a little more strict. They have forms you have to fill out and you have to do it in advance and you have to book an appointment. And it's a bit of a pain in the ass, really. And it's more expensive. Thailand has probably been the super easiest place to renew my visa. Okay, Vietnam, you got tourist visa, 30 days, 90 days. There's a digital nomad visa coming. And Philippines, again, this is a joke to renew. They have 30-day visa plus a renewable up to 36 months. Easiest long stay country. Again, it's like Thailand. It's virtually the same. Super easy to renew. You just show up and you renew. As in terms of long-term visa. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, Thailand does have a retiree visa. So if you're a retiree visa, you can apply for that and it's much longer. Okay. Now, I wanted to mention this. Portugal is not cheap. Portugal does have a digital nomad visa, but you have to have a minimum income of $3,000 a month. And, or there's another visa called the D7 visa, passive income, $1,000 a month. For that, the surf towns are more expensive than the other countries that I've mentioned. Southeast Asia is much cheaper. Portugal's not cheap. So Portugal's nice, but it's not cheap. Portugal 15 years ago used to be a big digital hotspot. It was very cheap, but trends caught on, social media caught on, and it's more expensive now. Still beautiful though. Okay, Colombia. They only have digital nomad visas, and for that, you only need to make $900 a month. So it's much cheaper to get. You don't need as high income to get that visa. They do have tourist visas, 180 days. And by the way, guys, most of the visas that I got traveling, I never really applied for an official long-term visa. The only visa I ever applied for before I went to the country was Bali, because their process is quite strict. And it's really easy to get, but you have to apply in advance. And you had to pay a fee. It was quite expensive. And I'll get to Bali in a few minutes. But all the other countries, because it's so easy to just renew visas, I just did that. I found it. I never bothered to apply the proper way and go for a digital nomad visa. But you can do that if you want to be there, like I say, a year or 2 years. That might be a better option. And then, of course, there was Bali. I haven't talked about it yet. And they have like a Quitas visa, which is quite long. And then there's a shorter term visa you can apply for. And the fees ranged anywhere from a couple $100 to $1,000. I forget what Quitas was quite expensive. I think Quitas lets you stay quite long. Check the rules on that, because the Bali visas are always changing. And now there's also another visa Bali's come up with, where if you have over a certain amount of money, I think it's over, the last time I checked, I think it was over $100,000, you can get a long-term visa. They're really catering to people who have a lot of money. They really want people with money in Bali now, which is kind of ironic considering it's all the cheaper, budget packers that made Bali famous in the first place. But anyways, that's another story. Okay, so hopefully that gives you an idea on the type of visas in some of those countries. So what you want to do is research the visas and then apply for the visa, save your money, get your insurance, and get an international bank card. What I recommend is, there's a couple companies that do this now. There's two, and I'm not affiliated with them. There's Wise and there's Revoult. And those two banks are really good. I use Wise, and a lot of the Europeans I met use Revoult. Canadians, I don't think, can open a Revoult account. I think it's pronounced Revoult. Anyway, the reason it's so good is you can convert to your money into almost any other currency, major currency, instantly with your phone. So you don't have to go into a local currency place anywhere in the world. You never have to step foot into which is great, because a lot of them are scams. A lot of them gouge you. If you do it in an airport, you're going to get gouged up the a-hole. If you go to a currency exchange place while you're traveling abroad, it could be a scam. It could be a ripoff. They could be selling dollars. Like, it's so sketch that you're much better off to just convert the money on your phone, and then you can literally just pull that money out in local currency with Wise, and you can do it with Revolt. Wise is great, and they don't have any banking, and they don't have a monthly fee. But they just have they have lower fees than regular banking. So I love them, and I've used them everywhere I traveled, especially in all of them. I used them in all the countries I traveled. Okay, let's talk about safety in each country in 2025. Another lady, I guess, asked me, is it safe to live in Nicaragua, in the Philippines, and in Vietnam? And yes, overall, petty theft exists. Violent crime towards foreigners is very rare, especially in daylight, and in digital nomad zones where there's a lot of digital nomads or tourists. There has been some incidents, but that's usually happens at night when people are alone, or a common thing criminals will do is they know that a certain hotspot or party is hot every, say, Saturday night, and a lot of tourists will be coming home drunk. They'll be walking home, usually alone or with maybe one friend, and that's when you're a target. at night when you're drunk. So best to always take tuk-tuks, pay the money, get the cabs, get a ride, and don't get a ride from someone who's been drinking, obviously, because that happens a lot too. A lot of drinking and driving on scooters in these places. So that would be my recommendation, is just, it's very safe in those countries, but just at night, you got to have some common sense, right? I mentioned Nicaragua already, but I didn't talk about the other countries. So let's get into that. Okay, as of Peru, the tourist areas are safe. There are pickpockets in Lima and Cusco. There is some sketch areas in Mancora, which is a very north part of Peru. There has been stories of people getting robbed at gunpoint at night, but that was because they were by themselves and it was at night. There is one red flag I wanted to mention, and some of these countries, what ends up happening is, and the locals told me about this, if you see a car with a person in it at night and they're parked near you, be aware of that car. That's a red flag. Don't go near cars with people in the cars when you're walking by them, okay? Because they can easily grab you and pull you into the car. So that's a red flag. Avoid that situation. And the other situation is if you're walking at night, if you happen, don't be, but if you are, and a car is driving by, suddenly slows down and stops near you and kind of just hanging out, that again, that's a red flag. Just be aware of that. I've heard of those situations where they will grab people, especially if you're a female more than a male, but it doesn't matter at night, male, female. If you're by yourself, you're putting yourself at risk. So make sure you walk with someone, and whenever possible, take taxi, take tuk-tuk. I don't want to scare anybody. I walked plenty of times, so many times, like hundreds of times by myself up till about 9, 10 o'clock at night. I never had any problems, but I did hear some stories and probably should have taken tuk-tuks, anytime after, once it got dark, I probably should have taken, if I was a female, I would have taken a tuk-tuk for sure. As a male, it's a little easier. But regardless, hopefully that makes sense. Okay. Something to think about. Okay. Thailand. One of the safest countries in Asia is Thailand. It's solo friendly. There's a few scams going around. Vietnam's very safe. Motorbike theft is very common there for some reason. In Hanoi and Saigon is very secure. Okay, Philippines, the islands are very safe. It's kind of a funny situation in the Philippines because if you go to the capital, Manila, and you go to any mall and there's guns in every mall and there's security guards like armed to the teeth with like shotguns, and it's a little intimidating, but I think that actually makes everything just safer, that having those guards with guns, and those security guards are actually quite friendly. I never had a problem. Bali is very safe. Theft in Canggu is common. There's earthquakes. You probably got to worry about the earthquakes a little more than the theft. Portugal, extremely safe. Colombia. Okay, now Colombia, I would use Uber, not taxis. I've heard great things about Colombia and I haven't had any problems. Colombia, all the travelers I've talked to, haven't had any problems. Now, Venezuela, at the moment, I would just avoid. Unfortunately, I haven't visited Venezuela, and I don't know about the safety in Brazil because I haven't been there either. So let's talk about the cost of living in each country in 2025. I get a lot of questions about that. How much does it cost to actually live in a lot of these digital nomad countries right now? This is a huge topic. I would say here's the flash card version. Here's a quick overview. So let's start with Nicaragua. Nicaragua, you're looking at $900 to $1,500 a month. And that would include rent, food, and a scooter. You're looking at around, for a nice one bedroom, around $400 to $700 US a month. Food's around $350 a month. Scooters around $60 to $100 a month. So something like that. Surf towns might be slightly higher. So San Juan del Sur might be a little higher. Now, in Peru, the prices really range depending on which part of the country you live in because it's such a vast country. But let's say coastal. So Mancora, Libidos, you're looking around $850 to $1,300 a month. Rent is around $300 to $550 a month. Food, $200 to $320 a month. And the surfing lifestyle is very cheap. Renting a board was, I think, $10 a day to rent a board. And of course, if you had your own board, you would save on that, right? You could always buy a board. A lot of the digital nomads I met would actually buy their boards once they got to the country they wanted to stay at. Once they got to their destination of choice, they would actually go on Facebook Marketplace and buy a board they really liked. And they would keep it for the time they had it, and then they would sell it. So they actually would get most of their money back. And in fact, sometimes if they weren't using their board all the time, they would rent out their board and they would actually make money. So they actually could make either a zero loss or even make a bit of a net profit on the board. So that's another good little secret there that a lot of the nomads would do. And they might buy two boards, and then depending on how advanced they are. Okay, in Thailand, you're looking, again, around $1,000 to $1,600 a month. Thailand's such a vast country too, just like Peru. There's so many different parts and so many different areas that vary in price to price. Generally speaking, rent's around $300 to $700 US. Street food's around $1.50 to $3. And it's a digital nomad heaven. Vietnam, probably one of the cheapest countries I have on this list today. $800 to $1,200 a month, probably even less. Rent's like $250 to $500. Food's about $200 a month. Cheapest big city living in Asia is Vietnam. Philippines is also another big cheap one, $900 to $1,500. Rent's $300 to $600. Food's $250 to $350. The islands cost a little more sometimes, depending if you go to the bigger touristy islands versus maybe the smaller remote ones, because there's 5,000 islands to choose from. So you go to the busier touristy ones, you're going to see higher prices. Bali is a little more expensive. You're looking at maybe $1,200 to $1,800 a month. The rents in Bali, I found a really nice place in Bali for $500, but now in 2025, you're probably looking anywhere for something decent, $500 to $900 a month. And sometimes you find some really good prices on Airbnbs in Bali for some reason. You can get some really good deals. Colombia, pretty cheap, $900 to $1,400 a month. And the rent is around $300 to $600 a month. And again, some of these prices may differ depending on when you go. So I found Christmas time, prices skyrocket, okay? October, for some reason, prices are really reasonable, really cheap. October, November was a super time to get started. If you want to get going and traveling, October, November is really cheap. And then the summertime, like North American summer, is very expensive as well. So July and August gets very pricey. Everybody wants to travel in July and August, if you're from the US and Canada. Wintertime for North Americans is actually a really cheap time. Not only that, the flights are super cheap. I find the prices are much cheaper in October and November versus Christmas time in January. February, March is okay. And even April, the prices will start to skyrocket in August, July and August. So just keep that in mind. And I'm talking huge fluctuations in price depending on which time of year you travel. So somebody asked me, like, does the snoring bother you in hostels? And yes, I'm super sensitive to snoring. I hate snorers. I don't hate them, but I hate the sound of snoring. It's probably the worst sound in the world. And it wakes me up. Anything wakes me up. So I need to have really good sleep, and sleep is really important to me. So what I would do is I would have a almost foolproof system. For the best sleep possible in hostels, this is what I did. I would get silicone earplugs, not the foamy ones, but silicone. The silicone earplugs that stop water, the ones you can go swimming with, those ones block out like 99% of the noise. And they're very unlikely to fall out, okay? And not only that, then I would have a headband that goes around, and you can get them on Amazon for like $15, $10. And that would make sure that the earplugs do not fall out. Also, it acts as a dual thing to cover your eyes, so it blacks you out. Not only that, you can get these headbands that play a little bit of music. So sometimes I would just turn on just a faint bit of relaxing meditation music, to help me fall asleep, and it would block out. There's no way I wouldn't hear anything. The silicone earplugs work on their own, but then if you have the head, I didn't hear a thing. It was perfect, and that's how I got my sleep in the hostels. I also would never sleep if I could help it. I would never go to an 8-person hostel. I would do a 4-person at the most. 4-person is usually pretty quiet. It's when you start getting into 8 people in a room, then that's when it gets noisy. Especially if you stay at a party hostel, you're going to get that. I always stay at the more expensive hostels. You should get higher quality of people. And then now when I travel, I actually am more inclined to get private rooms. I actually look for private rooms now. So what I prefer when I can find it is, I love the hostel setting. I love the social segment. I love all the socializing and interacting with everyone, but I like having my private room. So if things get, you meet somebody, whatever, it's nice to have your own room as well, right? So I spend the extra money now and I get the private room. So if you can swing the private room in the hostel, a lot of hostels now come with private rooms. Usually what I would do is I would find the hostel that I really wanted to stay at, and I would contact the manager and I would say, okay, I see that this is your price, but can you give me a better price if I stay for a month? Or if I stay for 2 months, what would be your price be? And a lot of owners will give you a discount if you book a month or 2 months and do a long-term stay. So if you're a long-term, if you want to do a long-term thing and you want to socialize, you want to interact with people, I recommend jumping on that and contacting people ahead of time and see if you can get a deal. I would travel super light. My backpack would be super tiny. It would be, I could fit it under the seat of a plane. It had 2 t-shirts, a swim shorts, and maybe just a few toiletries, and that's it. Anything I needed, I would buy when I got to my destination. Because usually now, you have to pay such an extra fee for larger carry-ons. Even if you just have a carry-on, you have to pay for carry-ons now. So I get really, really portable in my travel. It's super small. If you can afford the extra money, then yeah, maybe swing a bigger bag, but I try to keep it to 1 bag. I never check luggage. It's always with me because I hate losing luggage. Here's another big tip for you is if you are traveling to these hot countries, make sure that you have 1 really good hoodie or a thick sweater and 1 really good pair of thick socks and 1 really good pair of thick track pants. Because at night, these hotel rooms and hostels can get really cold with their AC. I've seen people have no clothes whatsoever for when it gets cold, and they end up freezing in the hostel at night. So big tip here, make sure that you wear, at least you have 1 outfit that keeps you super warm for when the air conditioning gets turned on, because otherwise you'll freeze and it's the worst feeling if you get super cold at night. And for the countries that are mosquito ridden, you really want to make sure you have a very thin pair of long sleeve shirt and pants that covers all the way down past your ankles and covers down to your wrists, because mosquito repellent won't be enough to get rid of mosquitoes. They'll still bite the hell out of you. So make sure you have at least a very thin, cool, long wearing garment. As well, I find if you don't like mosquito repellent, tea oil is a really good option. If you want something non-chemical, it keeps the mosquitoes off you. It works really well. And it's just tea oil scent, and mosquitoes hate it. So a lot of people were asking me where my favorite surfing was with all these countries that I've been traveling. And I have to say they all have their ups and downs and pluses and minuses. But overall, my favorite surfing destination for quality of surf on day in and day out, where it's always good surfing or you're always getting good waves, I would have to say Nicaragua was consistently having good days. And I was there in October, November, and December. Guatemala was a little more challenging because I didn't really enjoy the waves as much in Guatemala because they closed out a lot. There wasn't a nice left or right. It was just always, they were really advanced. So I didn't enjoy them as much. Nicaragua was great. The Philippines, I loved the Philippines. They were consistently great. There was a dry spell for maybe a couple weeks, but for the most part, for the majority of the time I was there was some really awesome waves. They get really big. It's some nice rights and nice lefts. You have a really good mix of different types of waves. There are a lot of beach breaks, a lot of point breaks. There is a bit of coral sometimes, but it's, as long as you go on high tide, it's not a big deal. You don't have to worry about sharks in the Philippines. You don't have to worry about that stuff. There is one thing you do have to be aware of in the Philippines, though, is I stepped on a couple of them. Sea urchin. The sea urchin are a big thing. Okay, you have to watch out for those. So you just need to be aware of where you're stepping. Not in all places, but there were some places where just don't step anywhere where you see dark crevices where you kind of fall into dark rocky areas. Like, it's just, there is some parts where you have to be. I did step on a sea urchin and it hurt like hell. And that took about a couple of days to heal. I just have to put on some lemon juice and it's not a big deal. There was in Peru, there was some, what do you call it? There was some jellyfish. They would sting you a little bit. Rocks to be aware of in Peru in certain parts. But for the most part, again, there was no sharks there's not really a shark thing in Peru. There's no sharks really in Bali and Philippines that I was aware of really. Sharks aren't really a big deal anyway, but if it is a concern for you, you might see that sort of thing more in Japan. Okinawa, there has been known to be some sharks there, and in Morocco, there's some shark sightings is there as well. But in terms of localism, I really didn't see any localism that worried me or concerned me. Everybody was super chill in all the places I've been: Nicaragua, Guatemala, Peru, Japan, Bali, Philippines, Vietnam. I haven't seen any problems. I've heard stories about localism problems in Portugal, but I actually haven't surfed Portugal yet. Saying that, the busiest place I've ever surfed was in Bali for sure. There was probably the only thing that I could say negative about surfing places was Bali, where there was some garbage. Hitting me in the leg was not cool, and there was some days were super busy. People were piling on top of each other, and it was just not a great setup. Other than that, probably my most favorite place to surf out of all the places I've been was in Siargao. And that's the northeast part of Siargao, not in Siargao itself, but more in the northeast part of the island where it's called Pacifico. It's a very remote, quieter part of the island. And there's all these little peppered surf spots that you can go to they get more remote the farther you go north. And there is some great surfing in there. Some days I'd be there by myself, or there'd be like two other people. It was heaven. And there's places like that in Philippines. There's a lot of places like that in the Philippines. And Taiwan is actually, I haven't been to Taiwan, but I've heard there has been some localism problems in Taiwan. But again, there's huge waves in Taiwan. There's some good surfing there. A lot of people don't talk about Taiwan. It's kind of underrated, but they have some massive, great surfing, and they get tsunamis there. So yeah, they're going to have some big waves there, probably too big sometimes. And Japan, they get too big sometimes as well. So hopefully that helps you on the surfing. The cost of the surfing in Southeast Asia is generally, $10 to $20. The cheapest surfing I ever did was in, I would say Peru was probably the cheapest in terms of board rentals. And the most expensive surfing I've ever done in terms of rentals and things like that was in Canada, on the West Coast in BC. That's pretty pricey because you need a wetsuit because it gets cold, and you need a board, of course, and everything else. And the accommodations are pretty pricey. So if you want a cheap, fun, budget-friendly place to surf that has great waves, great breaks, less people, as Peru would probably be a great pick. They have some great spots, and maybe even Ecuador too. I would say Ecuador also has some great spots. I've heard a lot of good things about Ecuador. And you can even check, I'll put a reference to was one guy, his name's Dan. He's a British guy, and he talks about in detail all these surf locations I've been mentioning, and he gives even more details. You can go check out his channel, and he's gives some, I think it would be a great resource to check if you're looking at finding some great surfing spots. That would be a good channel to check out. One of the big concerns I have when surfing is the cleanliness of the water. It's becoming more, each year it becomes more of an issue because with pollution and global warming and all that stuff. And I have had some eye and ear infections in the past in Nicaragua. It just happened. It was just for a couple of days, but I'm always a little more aware and a little more worried about filth or bacteria or contamination in the water. So generally the rule is if there's been a big rainstorm or swell and massive storm coming in and flooding, usually what that does is flooding will push garbage from the mainland into the ocean, and you can get a lot of contamination in the ocean. So it's always good for a day or two after a big storm to wait a couple days before you go back in the ocean. I always travel now with antibiotics for eyes and ear infections. Hopefully you never have to use them. I've only needed to use them 1 week out of 2 years of traveling. So it's not a big thing to be concerned about, but it is really nice to have those antibiotics in case you do get an eye and ear infection, because they're hard to find, or sometimes everybody's trying to get them, comes in and everybody gets eye and ear infections. All the stores clear out because you're usually in a small town, and the stores sell out of the eye and ear infection drops pretty quick. So it's really nice to have that peace of mind, to know you have them if you do get an eye and ear infection, because eye and ear infections are a real pain in the ass. They can be a little worrisome and really painful. The ears, especially the ears. There was one girl that actually scratched the cornea of her eye and it swelled shut. It got infected and she actually had to go see a specialist an hour away. And she was very worried, and it was fixed easily with some antibiotic drops. And it would have been helpful if she had had those herself, even before she went to see the doctor. So I would travel with some ear drops and eye drops everywhere you go. And if you see big storms, wait a couple days for it to come down. And if you see a lot of garbage, I don't know if they have water testing kits. There must be some water testing kits. You could, maybe a portable one you could take and you could test the water before you jump in. I know Guatemala has had some problems with their water contamination in the ocean. I know there's some really beautiful lakes in Guatemala that are famous. The Atlans, I think they're called. I'm just forgetting the exact name of them. But anyways, they can get really contaminated, and people were getting, when I was in Guatemala, people were getting quite sick in these beautiful inland lakes. They were swimming in these lakes and they get quite contaminated. And everyone was getting food poisoning, and it's kind of like everybody gets at least once. But it's Guatemala's actually, I checked the pollution. You can check online the pollution in each country, the water pollution, and you can get an idea. And Guatemala is one of the most polluted countries in the world in terms of water pollution. So you can check things online. There might be a water kit you can take. And I would say the cleanest water I've seen was in the Philippines. And I know some places can get pretty dirty in Mexico too. But that's something to think about when you're traveling as well. It never used to be an issue, but it is becoming one now. And so when you're making your travel plans, just do a little online checking of the water content in the country, how polluted it is compared to the rest of the world, and get those water drops. And I think you'll be a lot more, feel a lot better about where you're surfing. And I don't know what it was, but there was one while I was in Guatemala for like 2 weeks. The water was actually brown. It might be contaminated. I don't know. So I don't want to say anything bad about Guatemala. Just let me say this. For the record, Guatemala was one of my favorite countries, and I love Guatemala. And the surfing was fun. It was challenging, it was fun, and I loved it there. And I don't know if it was shit in the water, but it could have been some sort of contaminant, or maybe not. Maybe it was just the algae. I don't know. but it would have been nice to have a little water kit to test it and know for fact. So if you can find something like that and trouble with that, that would be as well. Or going to places that are more remote aren't going to have those problems. So I did see places in Peru that were literally, now these coastal towns were built by the Spanish. A lot of them in Peru in the 1600s, 1700s. They're ancient towns. And what they did was all the water in plumbing and sewage would all run into the ocean. That's how they built them. And you can see in the old towns that all the water runs into the ocean. And they're still like that today. They haven't changed the plumbing. So you can see this, and it's been like that for hundreds of years. So you can imagine if you go surfing, it's just, you don't really think about it. You think it wouldn't be that transparent, but it is. And it's not really a huge problem because in the ocean it dilutes. But if you're right next to it, there's some questions. So it's something to think about. And when you're traveling, and I know there was even Vancouver in Canada was caught dumping sewage just like a few years ago. And that was like 4 or 5 years ago, they finally got caught. So even like developed countries do it as well. And I know there was a really bad story in Mexico. I can't remember the name of it offhand, but you can Google it. It'll come right up. And the town was it was a coastal town and it was a party town. It was a really popular town in Mexico and it was really cheap and a lot of backpackers would go there. But that town was dumping everything in the ocean. Sewage was going in the ocean. There was garbage going in the ocean. People were getting sick. Everybody in the hostels and hotels were getting sick. They were getting stomach illness and foodborne illnesses and all kinds of stuff. And it was because the water was so contaminated. It blew up on social media a couple of years ago. I just can't remember the name of it right now. But anyways, that was one town in particular I can think of, but that's not the usual case. Like that doesn't happen very often. It's very rare, but I thought I'd bring it up. That's probably the only concern I have when picking a place to surf. I always look for the cleanest places. And I already talked about Bali. Bali has some issues with their garbage, but they're trying to clean up theirs as well. The governor's trying to clean them up. So overall, that's what I have to say about that. Hopefully that helps. If you have any questions, just shoot. And if you want to know more about surfing locations that I've been to, I go into depth with a couple of videos. You can check them out after this video. Okay, so I think that wraps up this podcast. If you have more questions, if you want to know anything, I would love to hear all your questions. Feel free to put them below. Tell me everything. Ask me anything. I will be sure to answer them in the comments, and I will even try to answer them in the next podcast. If you have any suggestions on what else you want to know or what we should talk about in the next podcast, I would be open to that. Let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.